You can start.
Me?
Yes.
Oh, well, we came during the war. I was 4 when the war bombs was being bombed in Hull, and Mum and Dad came to the village to escape the bombing, because that's what they were doing. So I've been here ever since, and married and went to school here, and never moved anywhere else. So.
Likewise with me, I was taken from Malta, really enjoying it there, all that beautiful sunshine and Mediterranean.
Because your dad was in the army, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was stationed there, and we went out with him for, I think it was 3 years. But at the end of just over 2 years, we were evacuated back to England. Just before the war broke out with Italy, anyway. And as when we got home, we came to live in Kilnsey with my grandma, and my uncle said, "Well, you're lucky to have come home. We've just been bombing Malta for the first time." So, yeah, we felt a bit uneasy because my father was still there until the end of till it all finished.
But you then lived in Kilnsey, didn't you, from then on?
But I lived in Kilnsey from then on.
Yeah.
Met Hilary.
And married, and that's it.
Yeah, so we've lived around here all the time.
So how, and I'm thinking particularly the cliff line, how has that changed in the 30, 40, 50 years you've been here?
A lot.
Tremendous.
Tell me what it used to be like.
A great lot. There used to be a lifeboat shed, and Michael will have photographs of it, a lifeboat shed, and then there was a big space, and then Mum and Dad had this snack bar. There was nothing there at all. In fact, during the war they put all these tank traps up, didn't they? The tank traps and things like that. And then gradually, as the cliff's fallen away, the tank traps and the lookouts and things have all gone down the cliff and disappeared into the sea. So I mean, there must a great amount.
Tremendous amount of cliff went.
And then towards Kilnsey, from Easington looking towards Kilnsey, there used to be what we used to call bents, and it used to be very much a bit like Spurn, really, with the seagrasses and sand all built up around the seagrass. But all that's flattened now, and it's just, they've built a man-made defence at the other side, haven't they, where there's a water. But it used to be really quite a lot.
We were not allowed on the beach at all during the war.
No.
But being boys, of course, Dad didn't took no notice of that. We used to go on the beach, and Hilary will tell you, I mean, it could have been a foot thick of peanuts that had all washed up from some ship that had.
We used to get grapefruits that were washed up.
Tennis balls came up in.
Was this from merchant ships?
Yes.
Yeah.
You see, the grapefruit, and they were good because we didn't have fruit, did we, during the war? And the grapefruits were, because of the skin, I suppose, were protected. They would float, wouldn't they, in the water? And so we could eat those. And then there were tins of tobacco, and also tins with what we thought was sweets in them. And they were like those little biscuits with the icing on. Little gems, do they call them?
Ice gems. Yeah.
Ice gems. There were tins with those in, which we thought was sweets, you see, because we were only...
Oh, they were lovely.
And do you know what it turned out? They were worm cakes. So I think the troops would have them.
Yeah.
So you didn't have worms during the war then?
Oh.
Yeah, but I tell you what, Christmas cakes had a lot of lovely things to them. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, true. It's really, really true. We thought, we'd really found something when we found these and that, and they really didn't taste very nice at all.
Coal would wash up, tons of coal from the sea. I would expect from. Well, I don't think it comes so much now. You still get a little bit, but in those days you could go and shovel it up into a truck. Really, if you get a truck on there, and it was really good stuff to burn as well. It was brilliant. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about this the cafe. how it was set up, what it used to sell? Thank you. Who used to
Mum,
come there?
Mum used to make scones, bake her own scones, and she used to sell tea and coffee. Well, I don't know whether coffee would be sold. Well, definitely
so,
jugs
yeah.
of tea. They used to sell it in jugs at that time. Jugs, tea, and she used to make sandwiches as well that was sold. But
With
Dad,
not an ice cream.
no,
No, an ice cream man used to come there, didn't
Dad used to have to carry the water from home down to the hill because there wasn't any water, and there were no toilets or anything there.
he? In those days, you know, the ships didn't have radar on them, so they used to come ashore quite easily in a gale. We had 2 or 3 used to had come ashore. And then you get the sort of thrill of the tugs coming and pulling them off. Well, as soon as one came ashore, your mum and dad used to put
Pine peas.
peas and chips, was it, or something?
Oh, I don't know.
And they used to come in the hordes to watch the ships and eat these.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So, what can you describe what this cafe used to look like?
Well, it was just like a wooden shed, really, wasn't
Yes,
it?
it was.
In fact, there is a photograph of it
Has Michael got one of those? Oh, well, you see, he's got everything. Really.
with Dad standing in the door and the thing. It used to be like just a wooden shed with a flap that lifted up.
Yeah.
That's all. Just
So,
like-
so who used to use it? Who used the cafe?
bought from it, you mean?
Yeah, who used to go along and buy the
Buy
things?
stuff. Everybody from, well, people that used to come to the beach. They used to come down. In fact, sometimes there were cars from the end of the road, well, beginning of the beach, right down to Kilnsey Road. There were cars lined up. You know, just to go on the beach. That's all.
So what happened to it? How long was it there, and why did they stop operating it?
I can't imagine how long it was there. Can you, Arthur?
Well, it would be.
I don't know why they stopped operating it really. Anyway.
Well, I would think by the time I came out of the Air Force,
Yeah.
I would think it
wasn't
had gone,
good,
wouldn't
but
it?
yeah.
So that would be 1950.
I don't
Yeah.
know why it stopped unless
Well,
they were tired
You know,
of doing it.
it's funny, isn't it? Really, when we were married, and when the first time we had a young child, well, it was Steve, wasn't it? I used to come home from school. Hilary would leave a note on the door. Got your dinner or got your tea? We're down on the beach because I mean the summers were really gorgeous. I mean, we used to go and spend all the time down there. We used to go swimming, and I'd made some shrimp nets. So we used to shrimp, and then boil them on the beach on a little fire, and eat shrimp. Simple. Now nobody does it. Now nobody goes on the beach.
So do you think something should be done to protect the coastline along here?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I mean,
They used to have groins,
Yeah.
and that in itself built up the sand between them. But they say it's too expensive to do that now. But to me, that would be better than building concrete because the waves and that they're so strong they can go through concrete. Whereas the sand, as it's built up, it doesn't.
well,
But
once it
the-
cracks and opens up, it's finished. Whereas if it's a piece of wood breaks, they just put another
But
one in.
because the sand is washed away, then it eats at the cliff, doesn't it? That's what happens.
Well, 1953 was the big flood, the biggest one they've ever had here anyway, and further down the coast, of course, where people had died in the great numbers. And we'd gone to Withensea, hadn't we, to the pictures. And when we came out of the pictures at Withensea, the water was flooding all the main
Down the main
roads.
street.
So we got on the coach, came back to Easington.
And the village was flooded.
The village was flooded,
Yeah.
and there was police, there was the Royal Air Force lads and lorries and lorries with blankets and goodness knows what, all sorts of things, and it was crowded. And they said, and I lived at Kilnsey at the time. It was before we were married actually. And they said, no, you can't go to Kilnsey. It's completely flooded all the way down. So I stopped at Hilary's house that night. We went in the morning, didn't we, to have a look round, and it was just the golf, not the golf, the nets for the football was like a fishing net. The water had subsided as it went down, and just within the low spots, but it was full of nets and bits of wood and terrible.
Seaweed.
So that was a flood from the sea. Was
Yes.
it an exceptional tide and storm?
It's
was
because
it?
because the wind and the high tide coincided.
Well, I didn't know how to get back to my Leconfield. I was at Leconfield at the time. I didn't know what to do, so I rang my people up. I couldn't get through. The wires were down, so I rang up Patrington because they had an air force there as well. They said, "Oh, just don't worry." He said, "I'll contact your unit and tell them that you can't get back because of that and this that." I said, "Oh, thank you very much." And it was nearly a couple of days before I actually got down to Kilnsea. I was taken down on one of these duck things, you know, these amphibian things. Got my uniform on and set off, and I got a paper in Hull, and it showed you the farm which was next to, more or less next to our house. And
Surrounded by water.
Sorry about water. Would you believe it? I got off at Leconfield, went into the guard room, and was immediately arrested for being one day 10 hours and whatever late. And then they marched me to our squadron leader actually, and he said, "It's not like you to be late, Piggott." I said, "No, it isn't." But I said, "I'd like to see you to see this picture on this thing." My family lived just, near there. So I said, "Good gracious to me, as bad as that was it. Are your parents okay?" I said, "Yeah." "Do they need any blankets? Do they need any?" I said, "Well, I think they're okay. I mean, I have been down and it's all wet." "Oh," he said, "I'll give you 7 days compassionate leave." So he wrote me one of these things out. I about turned, went to the guard room again, walked out, got a terrible look from the sergeant, and came home.
Did the water come into the house actually?
No, it came right up to the step because the steps were, well, not as high.
But the house that he lived in was right next to the Crown and Anchor. Have you seen the Crown?
No,
the pub?
No.
Well, there's only one pub
in Kilnsea. Oh right, I've not been down that far.
Oh right, well then there's the pub, the road, and then there's the Humber, and it comes right up to there. Well, his house was just next to it.
So was there a lot of damage to the coastline done then? Was there extra coastline disappeared, for example?
I would think there was a lot, but because you don't really notice at the time, you've got to have something which tells you it's gone. And we had some tank traps built on top of the cliff. Now if you go down and you can't walk on the left or that side of it, on the water side of it, then you know there's a lot going. And if you go again probably a year later and see them all down on the beach, you know it's
and
going.
This what do they call those big ones, that lookouts that had slits that you could get in, you could walk in. They were on the top of the cliff, weren't they?
Oh.
And gradually they went down.
Yeah, pillboxes. Yeah,
That's it, yeah.
They just went down. Gradually went
they
down.
were.
So what? I mean, you've lived here all the time. I mean, to me, it's a very strange thing because thinking that the land around you has disappeared. How do people cope with it?
I don't think we even think about it.
No, but further up the coast, there's a lot of beautiful little wooden bungalows built. And we went up there one day, didn't we, to a place, and they're just tippling over the. It's shocking, really. They bought these places.
We aren't that near the cliff, really.
No,
so it doesn't affect it. I never even think about it, really.
I suppose the sea's about maybe 3/4 of a mile
from us.
I guess it's the people in the caravan sites.
That's the caravan site, the businesses, really.
They're always moving the caravans back.
Yeah. That's about it.
Yeah. Let's change the subject. Tell me about blobbing.
Well, a lot of people, as you can say from the other day, they don't know what blobbing is, and I didn't either. But both my uncles and my grandfather did a lot of blobbing. When they were putting hooks out in a line, that was offshore and away out. But when, in the meantime, when the tide was in, they would have this raft which they'd made, and they would sit on it on a couple of boxes. And prior to that, you go and dig the bait, some really nice big juicy worms, till you get quite a lot, and then you thread them up on a piece. It sounds bad, but you thread it on, then you tie them a little like that, and you've got quite a big necklace, and you twist it round your arm or your hand until it's like that, and then you tie it onto the end of your fishing rod, which is usually a bamboo pole, and then you have this well, it's more like that, with a hole through it, and the wire goes, or the string goes through it like that. Then you tie it to your blob, so that's above the blob, and you lower it down onto the bottom of the sea, which isn't very deep anyway when you're blobbing, and you have a floating, well, it was usually one of those old tin, what you used to have a bath in, and that would be floating next to you. Put the blob down, wait till you got a bite, and then gradually pull it up very, very carefully, and when it got to the top of the water, a bit quicker, and then shake it, and they would drop into it. You could have 2 or 3 eels and a couple of flatfish on it, it was quite good. And they used to hang on by the teeth, which would stick into the cotton, the wool. But yeah, we've caught lots of stuff there. It was great fun, really. Yes.
That's unique. And also, tell me a little bit about Craggs Cubley, your
Craggs. His grandfather.
I just
Yes.
know you said
Grandfather.
His grandfather.
Yeah, well, he was a noted,
Character, as you would
everybody
call it
knew.
that day.
Everybody knew him. He liked his drink. He used to drink at the Blue Bell further down.
How many children did they have? Was it about
10? He didn't all live, but
Ivy, Daisy, Esther,
they had quite a few anyway. I can't
Ken,
remember.
Lambert, and
Anyway, he was sort of a poacher,
he must have done.
a fisherman, a shooter.
Yes, because he was in that photograph where they dug a hole to go duck shooting, didn't they?
Yeah.
And that was him in that photograph.
My daughter's got the only photograph we have of them sitting on a raft. Him, my grandfather, and my uncle. I've seen it.
I've seen it. Like Mike Welton.
Oh, Mike Landed did it. Yeah. And
Craggs then has got a big beard. He's quite a lot older than in the photograph you showed me.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But he was a great character, really.
I suppose he used to do that for a living, did he? I mean, did he work in any other way then?
Do you know?
Because
I couldn't
he used
tell you
to
what he
fish
did.
and shoot and sell them. Didn't he used to sell his?
Yeah, shoot rabbits and goodness knows what.
Yeah, and go and sell them. But on the way back, called all the pubs, and by the time he got back, he'd spent all his money.
That's right.
And your grandma used to take in washing to feed her family, I think.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was quite a character anyway.
I think every village needs its poacher, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You go sell the rabbits in the pub or whatever.
And this bird watcher who used to come down regular to do bird watching for, I think it came from Leeds actually. He came and asked me one day if he could have some photographs of my grandfather, and would I mind if he put them into this book, a bird watching book or whatever. I said no, which he did. I've never read the book. I've seen it but never read it. But those big photographs are what I think he gave me those, didn't he? For it, so yeah, so it is in a book somewhere.
So what bird did your grandfather shoot? A really rare bird.
Yeah.
He shot, didn't he?
Yes.
And this man was appalled that he was shooting it.
Well, there was a bird called the Great Bustard. Now, it had never been seen in this part of the world. and it happened to drop down in a field near, not far from where I lived. And he saw it and he thought, well, in those days, you know, I mean, they weren't bothered about keep it, you know. So he shot it.
Conservation.
So he shot it. And anyway, the bird watchers, who were really becoming quite a lot of them in those days, heard about it and came and said to him a day or two later, what was it like? And my grandfather's retort was, well, it was a bit tough, we should have boiled it first.
And it was a really rare bear.
There's nothing left of it to show them.
As you say, in those days they wouldn't have known necessarily, would they?
No,
There wouldn't
no.
be the protection on them and so on. But